In this week's Leeds Business Podcast, we speak to Jane Slimming, CEO of Leeds digital agency Zeal. Jane explains to us the importance of company culture on a business and how it saved her business after 70% of the revenue disappeared, and how she now helps other businesses to develop their company culture too. She also tells us about her near-death experience and how it changed her and her business forever. Plus, you'll also learn how to run a tech project when you're not even a techie. So, to make sure you never miss out on every episode of the Leeds Business Podcast, sign up to our priority list at www.leedsbusinesspodcast.com. Everyone that signs up gets a free gift to help their business. So, let's get into what is a really interesting interview. Hi everybody, this is Phil Fraser, Leeds Business Podcast, and today I have with me Jane Slimming from We Are Zeal. Hi Jane.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. So, let's start with an intro. Who are or what is Zeal?
Well, Zeal is a full-service digital and creative agency. So we have three main parts of the business. We have creative, tech, and marketing. So in creative, we do a lot of branding, graphic design, animation, videography, photography, a lot of digital asset content, creative content. And then tech-wise, we do a huge amount of tech builds. So we do anything from small brochureware WordPress websites right through to global e-commerce platforms, app development, SaaS platforms. And then the marketing is all about driving traffic to those platforms for some action, whether it be sales or lead driven, but we use SEO, PPC, paid social, digital marketing methodology to drive quality traffic. And the people we do it for is startups and scale-ups. So that's the area, that's the kind of really exciting arena that we play in. So we support a huge amount of companies that are looking for growth. So they're either just started out and they're looking to grow from nothing, or actually they've been going about for a while and they want to pivot and change and grow in a different direction. But yeah, the one thing that is key to all of the clients that we work with is they are looking to grow in some way. And obviously the services that we offer help them do that. And then we introduce them to people that can also help them in ways that we can't.
When you started out, did you decide that startups and scale-ups was where you wanted to be, or has that just come about?
No, not really. It's probably happened in the last 18 months, I'd say. I think when we came back from COVID, it was tough. It didn't feel like Zeal. We've been going for 13 years. We have an unbelievable culture. It's one of the things that is most important to me. I believe my job as CEO is to create an atmosphere where people do their best work and help them be the best versions of themselves. And we came back and it felt tough. It felt like we weren't gelling. We'd hired some people in COVID that didn't really fit our values. We didn't realize because people were working from home. We'd lost a lot of travel clients prior to that, which was difficult, but then we'd gained a load of tech clients. I bought a software company at the start of COVID, which was, in hindsight, a brilliant move because it allowed us to do a huge amount more tech development. I like to say that was inspired genius, but it was probably just luck. And maybe a bit of both. And then, so I don't know, I felt a little bit lost, I guess. So I actually got somebody external to come in and help us do a piece of work. It's the first time in 13 years that we've got anyone external to do some work for us. We have always, we've never done that before, but it was nice to get somebody who was external to look in. Sometimes you need that degree of separation. And we did a really big piece of work about talking about, which clients do, and I interviewed all the staff. What's your favorite client and why? Which is your worst client and why? We then looked at which clients were the most profitable for us. We also then looked at which clients had we got the best results for. So where had we did our best work? And we really kind of took it back to this. There's a book called Good to Great by Jim Collins. And I don't read business books, but it's a brilliant book. And it talks about the hedgehog theory. What are you best in the world at? What drives your economic engine? What can you make money from? and what you're passionate about. And it wasn't just about what was I passionate about. It was like, what was Zeal passionate about? What was that? So after interviewing everybody, the biggest thing that came back was they wanted their work to matter. They didn't want to work for the big corporates where actually they do just a tiny bit of a bigger picture. They loved it when they did a piece of work and they could see the results of that in terms of that client hires more people or brings out a new product or smashes their revenue target or moves offices or gets a new warehouse or expands into different European countries. Whatever it is, they wanted to see that what they were doing mattered. We worked with British American Tobacco for a long time on their non-tobacco products, and that was the opposite. You could spend huge amount of time and effort and then it just goes in the bin because of the legal team. And so we because I think as well, that has always been my passion. In the main, they were the clients that we were working with. So our great success stories, clients that we've been working with for 5 years where we've taken their revenue from £2,000 to £400,000 a month. That's their actual statistics. That's not just made up numbers. And so it wasn't like we had to, clear the decks and get rid of staff and clients, but we did actually resign a few accounts. And now we're just quite picky with the accounts that we take on. They have to be within that model of you have to want to grow. And you can't be a dickhead. They're two really key things for us. You have to actually trust what we say and work with us and enjoy the process, really.
You talked about turning down clients or getting rid of clients. Now, a lot of people who listen to this will have clients that, and I assume they paid well, but they just didn't fit. How difficult was it to do that? Both from I can understand the cultural side of it, but from you're the CEO, you do the numbers. How hard was it to do that?
Yeah, it's hard. It's definitely not easy. It's a lot easier to resign clients when you're hitting revenue targets and you're profitable, but we did it when we weren't. And that is scary because you go, okay, well, you're difficult. We don't get on. The results aren't great. You're not giving us what I need. You're upsetting staff. But, actually without that revenue, our performance decreases even more.
When the staff see you doing that, that must be a real positive as well.
Well, exactly. That's exactly the thing, because if there was one client which was actually disruptive, and we didn't really hesitate to resign that account after this piece of work. That was a really easy no-brainer. But it was a big client. It was a significant amount of our revenue, but they genuinely did upset staff, upset the culture. We couldn't get what we wanted. We were treated poorly. When I announced it, I announced it based on the fact that they don't match our values. Well, that's the strongest message you can send to your staff, to tell them that your values are important, because actually we're choosing values over money. But like I said, I'm not going to pretend that we then sacked every single client or, we have, and that's not the right thing to do either. But what we then did is just got lots of clients that were in our wheelhouse in, and naturally that kind of now just happens organically.
How do you find, or how do you select those clients that fit?
They select us, really. So I think 99% of our leads on new business comes through referrals. So people refer us. And they refer us because they know we're experts with these kind of companies, startups and scale-ups. So they're like, you want to go speak to Zeal if you're looking at, growing an e-commerce company. That's who you want to go see. So it's been quite a while now since we have had an inquiry. We've had an inquiry from a couple of clients that don't necessarily there's grades of it, right? There's, a bullseye target, which is e-commerce, B2C, 500,000 funded startup wanting to grow into a new market. That's our bullseye. It's not to say that actually around that, you don't also work with clients that, maybe they're not 500,000 funded. Maybe they've got friends and family and they're, seed funding and they're looking for that in the future. Or maybe they're not strictly B2C e-commerce, but maybe they're a lead generation, so there's lots of different things, but the values thing is really key. And it is that, like, I met a couple of guys yesterday of a potential new business that we'll be pitching for. And I was just instantly, I want to work with you so bad. Like, you're my kind of people. You're straightforward, you're honest, you're transparent. You'll give us what we need. We'll give you what we need. It's that instant, like, we are, really like meant to work together. That's what I get really excited about.
Yeah. And the investment time you put into getting the culture and the staff and the offering to that point then allows you to be able to be in that situation where go, yeah, you're right for us.
Yeah. Or you're not right for us. So that's also fine.
It's fascinating you mentioned Good to Great, because one of my interviewees last week mentioned Good to Great, and Good to Great is a book I was introduced to many, many years ago, and we had our BHAG on our meeting room wall so that anything we did, we could point to it and say, does it fit that? Yes or no? So, great that you did that. Just going back a while. I mean, you mentioned you've been going 13 years. Now, I know, because I've done my research, you had a nice account director job at a very good agency.
I had an account director job at an agency.
What makes you jump out of that, chuck away a good job, nice salary, and go, right, I'm doing it myself now?
Two things. One is the first ever job I had at an agency was an agency called Leeds, who was owned by Dom and Annette, who left Brilliant Media, ironically, which is the agency that I was at before I started Zeal. They left Brilliant Media and started at Leeds themselves. And before that, I'd had some client-side marketing jobs, and they were all very good but boring. And within a week, I'd just been blown away by this agency. It felt like, this is where I'm supposed to be, like round peg, round hole moment. Genuinely, I was like, this is the career for me. And this is the agency for me. And I was there for I think probably maybe 6 years. And I learned what to do at that agency. They genuinely cared about their clients. They genuinely cared about their staff. They were great. They were just amazing. And Annette took me out for lunch, I think on my second week. And she told me the story about how she started Leeds with Dom. And as soon as she told me the story, I said to myself, I want my own agency by the time I'm 30. I said that in my head. And if I say something, I will do it. I am so stubborn that it was never a choice. I didn't deliberate over it. I didn't think about it. It was to me. I spent from when, 22 at MediaVest, I spent those 8 years making sure I had as much experience and exposure and knowledge and understanding of the industry and the business to be able to set up my own agency. So when I was 29, I resigned and set up Zeal. The second reason was I would always say I learned what not to do at that agency. I think despite there being some great people there, in fact, Mike, who's our COO, who joined Zeal about 3 months after I started, he was there and I watched him try and do good stuff and try and get new things. And he was brilliant, so smart. He developed his own products that would have saved PPC teams thousands of pounds in time. But the bosses didn't want to do it. And I think it was a terrible agency towards the end. I think they didn't care about the staff. There was this culture of you had to be in until 7 o'clock at night, but you didn't have the work to do. So you just messed about until 7 o'clock at night when you felt like you could leave. Look, there was some good people and some good stuff about it, but absolutely, when I say I learned what to do at MediaVest and what not to do at Brilliant Media, that is the absolute truth. So when we first started, I used to say to Mike, is this something Brilliant would do? And if the answer was yes, we wouldn't do it.
So you got all your learning from your previous agency, said, right, I'll do that and I'll do that and I'll do that, but I won't do that and I won't do that and I won't do that.
Yeah, I've got learnings from every single job that I've done. I had a really interesting conversation with another agency owner about what makes staff like superstars or what? How do you find those? You know, when you've got one, haven't you? And you've all got a few, whatever number that means, but you're like, God, they're absolute superstars. What is it that makes them superstars? And they did a big piece of work, and I totally agree with him. And I thought this was genius, actually. Every company should do this. We should do this. He got his senior management team to have a superstar in mind in the business, and then say what it was that made them a superstar. And they got it down to the fact that it was curiosity was one. And I think that is one of our values, is question everything. Like, always be, can I do this better? Can I do this faster? Why are we doing it? Is it right? Have we asked if it's right? Can we change something? What does this do if I push it? How does this work if I pull it? That's like really key. And the other was like a work ethic, like genuine work ethic. And so we were talking, and I said, that's all well and good, get it, and agree, totally agree. I said, but how do you find those people? And he said they don't interview anybody that hasn't had what they class as a shit job on their CV. And I just thought, yes. I look at the people and I'm like, go work in a restaurant, go work in McDonald's, go work for, I mean, they must be the shittiest. I worked for Safe Style Windows on the telephone. I went door to door in Australia. I dressed up as a kangaroo in Sydney. It's the only job I've ever been fired from. And I was only fired because I went to McDonald's, not realizing that Greenpeace and McDonald's were probably not brand associated. So yeah, I just think, but I learned so much from my sales jobs. I learned so much from every shit job I've ever done. There is a learning, and sometimes the learning is, God, I never want to do this again, so I've got to make sure that I don't have to. Or sometimes it's like, I would do this so differently because I know how it feels to be on that side of things. Or sometimes it's like, God, that is brilliant. I am definitely going to implement that into anything I do going forward. So yeah, I think definitely that you learn just as much. You learn from any job you do. I don't think there's a job that I've done where I haven't learned anything at all.
I totally agree with that, and I regularly go into schools and speak to sixth forms, and that's one of the things I say about a career. It's not linear. As long as you learn from what you're doing, you can only get better. I want to touch on. I mean, you've talked about culture quite a lot, both in terms of bad culture and good culture. I know that's something you push through. Is it a separate company or a division of Zeal? Culco. Tell me about that.
Wilco is a totally different business, and that was set up after the changes that I made to Zeal, when I saw the effect that they had on the culture and the staff and the productivity and the hiring the right people and firing the right people and doing all that good stuff. I just got really excited by it. I was like, why doesn't everybody do this? And I think when stuff comes really naturally to you, you kind of think everybody does. So you don't think you're special. I never think I'm special. I'm the only person doing this. I just think this is how it's done. Everybody does this. And then actually, I'm part of a lot of different leadership groups, and I mentor a lot of people. Obviously, we have a lot of different clients that we go into their businesses to see them. And I'm like, not nobody, but there are companies that don't have a clue. I remember England, I'm not a football fan, so I might have got these exact games wrong, but England were in like a World Cup, and they hadn't been in like a World Cup final for 100 years or something. So it was a big deal for the country, and everybody was going mad about it. And the match was on a Monday night, and I just said to somebody to come in at lunchtime on the Tuesday, have the morning off. And I remember saying I'd done it. It was a passing comment. I'd said I'd done it at a leadership group, and there were a load of manufacturers. And I get it because it's different from manufacturers. But there were quite a few people that went, you did what? That. And it blew their mind. And I was like, that's pretty normal. I don't think that's that weird. And I knew a load of companies had also done it. Anyway, so I spoke to my now business partner, Lisa Lister. She's got an incredible background in leadership groups and management consultant and change consultancy. And I said, if I want to do something, you're the person that's the best person to do this with. And we developed a program where we basically go into businesses and teach them how to really put culture first on their agenda. So we talk about values and vision and hiring the right people, and then how to engage them. Engagement process is engagement programs, which are more than just, the pub on a Friday night, actually doing stuff which inspires and motivates and creates energy for their staff. And it's been amazing. And we were very lucky to be funded by the LEP, and we put about just over 100 businesses through the process, and the results have been amazing. Like, they've been really, really good. So, it's great to see that. And again, that's what I like. It's so good when I can go back into a business and go and look at the positive impact that Culco's had on this business now. Absenteeism's down, because recruitment costs, especially after COVID, were insane. And that's partly where this came from as well. It was like, how do we get the right people and keep those?
So how would a client evaluate whether Culco has worked for them? What do you set KPIs, or do they set the KPIs? How would you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing. Like, I moved from traditional marketing, media buying, really. I used to buy TV and outdoor, and it was very glamorous and exciting. And we'd get free dinners and trips to Paris and ski holidays. And I mean, awesome. Do not get me wrong. But when digital came on the scene, everybody was there. It was kind of like the geeky cousin at a wedding where you're like, piss off with your cost per click, like whatever, bore off. But then I was like, shit, you can actually see exactly what the spend is doing, and it's really accountable, and it's KPI driven, and that I am a geek secretly. Like, I'm like, yeah, I love that. I want to share, I want to prove stuff. I don't want to just be like, this feels good. So Culco is all about accountability. So we do employments we talk about that as one of the modules in the program, so to speak, is how do you measure this kind of stuff? And there's lots of different ways. It could be in productivity or absenteeism, or how much you're spending on recruitment, over the years and months, depending on the size of your team. But in its basic, we do help them put in anonymous employee surveys to see how people are feeling and how they're. And there's some stuff that you can't. Me personally, I can walk into Zeal and I just feel the vibe. I'm like, everyone's buzzing, everything's great, everybody's happy. It feels like Zeal again. Sometimes you're like, something's off. You can feel it. I think if you're a good leader, you can feel the energy of your team, really.
I see. Just talk about culture. I noticed you played rounders / softball last week. Is that right?
We did. Just
a warning to your team. That's how I met my wife, playing in an agency softball game.
Oh, I see. Well, it was just Zeal, but that came across because we did rounders. So my mum works at Zeal a couple of days a week. A couple of days a week. And when I was younger, I played rounders for county.
Ooh.
I played rounders for county once. When I was telling everybody, and everybody was like, whatever, like eye rolling. And then, laughing. And then it became a running joke that Jay plays rounders for county. And then somebody must have mentioned it to my mum, and my mum was like, no, she didn't. And I was like, Mum, I did. My mum had totally forgotten that I played this.
Oh, no.
So then, anyway, so it's a running joke, but I do love rounders. Like, I was first post, and it was a great game. So yeah, sometimes I'm like, let's get on a train and go play rounders. So yeah, we did that last week. It was good, really good.
You also help your clients through Zeal Connect as well, which in effect isn't beneficial to you, but it's beneficial to the client. And again, I think that's that comes across as one of your culture points as well, is, we'll help clients whether we benefit or not.
Yeah, I mean, we don't directly benefit. So when we make introductions to the right people to help that client, there's no kickbacks or commissions or anything like that. But obviously that's why as an agency, we give a shit if our clients are succeeding or failing. We absolutely care. So when the results are great, I've just been to a client this morning who bought us all cakes because the results are great, and it's wonderful. Thank you. And I will take clients out for lunch thinking that I'm going to be paying, and quite often they'll be like, I'm going to get this because the results have been great, and that's lovely. That's nice. And then when things aren't going so well, we are like, how can we fix this? What can we do? And if the answer isn't us, then absolutely. I've been doing Zeal for 13 years. I've been in the industry for, nearly 20 now. In fact, 20. I've built up a really, really strong network of unbelievably talented people, be that in actually, how do I structure some commercial finance? How do I do some debt funding? How do I get PE houses interested? Should I do crowdfunding? Is there an accountancy that really gets small businesses that aren't going to charge me $5,000 a month, but actually are going to be really good? Who do I turn to if I need a warehousing, which aren't going to penalise me for not having a lot of stock, but allow me to grow? These are all absolutely, probably in the last month, questions that we've had. And I don't know the answer as an expert in that field, but I know the people that will help them. And it is just really simple. And I think I have that relationship now with these people where if I introduce them, they know it's a good introduction. They know I've done it for a reason. They know there's like a culture or a values fit as well, because I don't have anybody in that network who doesn't align with our values. It's like, you've got to care about these businesses and you've got to look after them, because starting a business isn't hard. I have a really, really strong, absolute belief that if you want to, and not everybody wants to, and not everybody should, but if you want to, if you've got it inside you that you want to run your own business, anybody can do it with the right support and the right opportunity. That's it. It's that support. It's that having people. So I love introducing people to other people, and I love seeing that. And I am actually, it is a skill of listening to them talk and going, that's the problem, and then going into my file of facts and going, that's the answer. There is a skill there, and I guess people do commercialize that as being introducers or whatever. But my theory is, it's if our client's going to grow, they're going to spend more. The results are going to be better. Everything's going to be easier and better. And that, that Zeal Connect work is really important to me.
Before we go any further, let me talk to you about the Leeds Business Podcast Gentleman's Agreement, and ladies, because we're talking to a lady today. So my half of the Gentleman's Agreement, really, really simple. Every week, I bring you inspiring Leeds business people for you to listen to, totally free. Your half of the deal, Mr. Listener and Mrs. Listener, is you have to do 3 things in exchange for that. 1 is I want you to share this podcast with just one person who you think will get value from it. Number 2, I want you to post a review of the show, either at Apple Podcasts or Podchaser. And number 3, I want you to give this episode a like. That's all you have to do. Fair deal? Jane, do you think that's a fair deal?
I do. As long as they're nice about me as well, that's fine.
Right. Okay. All right. Step 4, you have to be nice about Jane. You don't have to be nice about me. You have to be nice about Jane.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. Okay. So before I talk about that, you were talking about Zeal Connect. Now, we could exclusively reveal you're going to turn it into an app as well, aren't you?
Yeah, we are. It's been built. So and that's come from, like I mentioned before, a real passion and belief that anybody, if they want to, can do this. I do think being entrepreneurial or having your own business is always, it's in you. It's just in you. So I used to sell scrunchies on the back of a school bus. I used to literally go around Ilkley because they had the best material shops. And they used to ask for free material from their ends of like curtains and, that kind of thing. And then I used to sew scrunchies and I used to flog them on the school bus. I've used to wash cars, go to the neighbours with blackberries that I'd picked off the hedgerows and sell them as a kid. I always was that kind of person. But I am also very, very aware that the reason that I have this great network is because I come from a privileged background. So I was very lucky to have a mother and father who encouraged me and pushed me. I was lucky to go to a privately educated school where it was a all-girls school where I was told I could be anything I wanted to be. And I grew up in an environment where I never questioned if I was good enough or should I or, all of that stuff. And I think there is a huge amount of advantage to that, and this app is to kind of, I guess, scale what I'm doing, but also allow anybody that I wouldn't come across in normal life because, I don't know them, to have access to these wonderful people. So there's a huge, I think, social economic divide, which is only growing. I mean, I won't get political, but it's only growing bigger. And so this is my way of saying, I want to put this app in the hands of people so that I can share my network with people who wouldn't necessarily normally get the chance to have that network of people. And that's really important to me. There's a lot of work to be done there, and it's something that I'm really passionate about. And this app allows me to scale, and it allows me to promote it into those areas which, may not have had the experience and chance and privilege that I have.
I just want to go back because we've talked about how much of an influence COVID had on you and the agency. Was that the biggest, both negative and positive influence you've had through the time you've had Zeal?
That's a good question. I mean, definitely one of, right? Because nobody knew what they were doing in COVID, let alone the world leaders. But no, I think one of the most profound things, or the things that changed me, I guess, and therefore the business is in our fourth year of trading. I think it was about maybe third or fourth year. So we've got maybe 8 members of staff. We're just kind of getting to that growing and greatness and all good stuff. I was actually very poorly, so I got Crohn's disease and I was taken into hospital. Very, very poorly. Was told that if they didn't operate in the next 3 hours, I'd die. I was on the operating table for, I think, 9 hours, and then I was in intensive care for a week following that, which was obviously just not good at all. It was really difficult, but it was the best thing that's ever happened to me. It changed me in a way where you nearly die. That's the long and short of it is. And I always say to my mum, it was the best thing to happen to me, that. And she was like, well, it was not the best thing to happen to me, which I totally get. I think sometimes it's part of the loved one of the patient and not the patient. But yeah, it was a terrible time, and I was off work. I was off work for probably 3 full months. And when I came back, I was incredibly weak and I took quite a lot of time to rehabilitate myself. But I remember walking in, we were talking about this the other day, walking into the office and thinking, what am I walking back into, and everything was fine. Genuinely, everything was fine. I think I even said something to Mike. I said, I don't feel like I'm even needed. And, nothing had gone wrong. It hadn't grown in the same way that I think it would have done if I'd have been there. I think there was, I'm not suggesting that I am of no use whatsoever to the agency, but I realized at that point that it had outgrown it just being me. It wasn't just mine. It was its own entity and its own thing that needed to be protected and nurtured and everything else. And that definitely kind of changed me both personally in how I looked at life and professionally at how I looked at the agency. So that was a really big, I guess, moment in the timeline for me in my business career.
Wow. That's a tough way of learning a delegation skill, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I was always good at delegating, which is my old boss said it in a very backhanded, complimented way, but I don't care how he meant it. It is a compliment to be able to delegate. But yeah, I'd never stepped away from, we hadn't anticipated me stepping away from the business for 3 months for sure. I think clients were probably a bit more understanding because I was so very poorly. And I think, it was like I say, the worst, I think, was it Dickens or something? It's the best of times and the worst of times. But yeah, it definitely fundamentally changed me, and I liked the change. So it's good.
So you'd see that as your sliding doors moment.
Yeah, there's that. I think there's sliding doors moments every day, literally, smaller and bigger. one of them was when we lost British American Tobacco. I mentioned that we worked with them for about 3 or 4 years, and we did the classic mistake, and I'm using air quotes for the word mistake because I'm not sure that it is, but they were 70% of our revenue, and when we lost them as a client, that was very scary, and we really had to dig deep to replace that lost revenue. And everybody always tells you, don't put your eggs in one basket, don't be reliant on one client. But very easy to say that. But when the client's knocking on your door saying, do you want another £1 million? It's very hard to be like, oh, actually, no thanks. So yeah, that was a big change. Now obviously we have a much wider range of clients, and there isn't that over reliance on one. But again, a difficult way to learn lesson. But this the thing that I learned from that is it reaffirmed to me and proved to me how important culture was. So I think we had about 30 staff at the time, and when we lost them, I remember getting them all in a meeting room and telling them and being totally transparent and honest and saying, we've lost them. I told them that things would be changing. I said that we wouldn't be doing paying for people to go for beers or doing because we did like ski trips and abroad holidays, we were doing that for staff. I said that will be stopping. I said, but I'm also taking a wage cut. I'm not asking any of you to take that. I'm just letting you know this isn't for you to be, but I'm not going to stand here and still drive. I changed my car. I stopped going first class on the trains when I went down to London, little things like that. But that actually they signify we're in this together. I'm not going to ask you to tighten your belts, and I'm not going to tighten mine. And I was terrified making that conversation to staff because people aren't stupid. They know you lose 70% of revenue. That's a bad thing. I told them that I would do everything in my power not to make any redundancies. And so I remember going back into my office and thinking, I wonder if we'll get loads of resignations now, and, if people are going to be pissed off and they won't want to work here. And it was the opposite, we didn't lose a single person. I didn't make a single person redundant either. We managed to claw back the revenue for that not to happen. But people were coming into my office, regardless of seniority or how long they've been there. And they'd be like, we've got this. We don't need them. We hate them anyway. We did, but as in, there's way better. I think we should do this, and I think we should do this. And it was, that was mega. I just thought if I hadn't have spent, 9 years building that culture, then that conversation would have been wildly different.
Yeah. Wow. Absolutely amazing. And we're going back in circles again, and we're back to culture again. Every week on the Leeds Business Podcast, we ask our guests to give us a 5-minute how-to. So, Jane, tell us what you're going to teach us, and then teach us.
So I just put together a little, and I won't go through it all because it's an hour long, but we do a seminar which teaches, it's called How to Run a Tech Project When You're Not a Tech Person. So I just thought I'd go through some of the key points here that would be, I think, that are really important. So the first one is discovery. So you should be investing a significant time in discovery before you put anything in hard code or soft code, if that's the thing. But before you put pen to paper, you need to really make sure that the agency or the individual that you are using to build this totally gets your vision now, and your vision of where you want to go. So in our discovery days, and a lot of good agencies do something similar, we're not unique in this, but we will sit down with the client, with the key stakeholders, and we'll say, right, tell us everything you want it to do now and you could think of it doing in the next 3 years to 5 years. And we will get all their requirements, and it's non-technical. So it'd be like, I need to be able to buy a pencil, or I need to be able to add I need to be able to pull information from zero, or I need to do X, Y, and Z. So we'll put everything on the board. It goes on. It takes, depending on how complex the platform is, it takes a long time. We also have our technical architects in the room who's built lots of different platforms. So we'll get the stuff out of them And then the second point, so discovery, making sure that everybody's on the same page is crucial. The second thing is MVP, so minimum viable product. And I love this when clients do this because I go, right, you've got 20 things on the board that you want this platform to do. What does it need to do for launch? For launch, what does it need to do? And they'll go, everything. And I'll go, no, like literally no. And I'm really like, you've got to be strong because I get it. Because now they've seen it on a board, they're excited. They're like, oh, I'm going to build this thing. And I go, no, you don't need it to do everything. It's called a minimum viable product. So the reason that minimum viable products are so important is twofold. One, it's a lot more, obviously, every one of those features, there's a cost to it. So actually use your budget wisely and do only what you absolutely need to for first launch, for first iteration. And the second is get it to market quickly. You might have a platform where you want 100 things, but that's going to take 12 months to build. Well, somebody else might be out there before you, or somebody else might be doing it. So it's all about speed and efficiency without losing the actual features that it needs to have. So minimum viable product. If you're a client, don't be precious. Genuinely think, what is the absolute minimum it needs to do here? And then the other thing is due diligence on the agency or the person that you're working with. Talk to their clients. I actually think one client did this to us and it was really sneaky, but I was like, yes, I like that. I had like 3 clients in one day ring me up and go, well, just let you know, I've given you a good reference for this client. And I was like, I'd never even heard of the company before. Literally never heard of the company. And I was like, what? Is somebody else pitched for this? And I don't know about it. So I sent a message around. Nobody had heard of them. I went on the website, didn't know anything about them. And I just thought, that's really weird. And I was about to send an email when my phone rang, and it was the owner of said company. And he said, oh, I'm just looking for an agency. I was wondering if I could come in and see you. And I said, well, you can. I said, you've been speaking to my clients, haven't you? And he was like, oh, I didn't know they'd tell you. I was like, of course they would. But I thought fair play. Before he'd even come in to see us or given us a brief, he'd gone on our website, looked at the people that we've done work for and just rung them direct. And I think I just think I liked it. I just thought he's a cheeky little shit, but in a good way, in a really good way, smart. Thought it was good. So yeah, do your due diligence.
And is he a client now?
He is a client. He's been a client for 6 years. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly. Look at platforms that they built. I also think it's really important that if you're not technical and you're not big enough to have a CTO or a technical person, if you're talking to an agency or a group or whatever of building this, it's worth paying a third party who has no skin in the game, I'm going to get paid if this happens, to actually look at any scoping documentation, look at the code of things that they've been built as well, and just do your due diligence to make sure if you're not like I couldn't tell you what was good or bad code, but my team can. So doing that is really important as well. And we actually do that for some people. So we actually act as that consultancy, but then somebody else builds it. Think about I don't know how far along I am, but think about the separation process. So it's like saying nobody gets married thinking about the divorce, but think about the divorce. Is the code yours? What's the IP? Is this proprietary tech? Are you licensing it? Who owns it? If you're wanting to sell in 5 years, what's happening? Again, real horror stories there about dubious mechanisms. So, and again, obviously, when it comes down to the contracts, get some legal advice on that as well. And last is it's never a launch and leave. Even a basic website will never be finished. So think about that ongoing support and trust. Once you've done that, if you've gone through a discovery, a due diligence, you've spoken to clients, you've got somebody to check the code, at that point, trust the agency. Like, give them enough space to do what they do and don't be kind of over their shoulder all the time. I liken it to the old, taking your car into a garage. I would not be over the mechanic's shoulder telling him how to, I don't know, change some oil or brakes, whatever. Like, once you've done all that, you have to get to a point where you're like, these are my partners, I do trust them, and go on your gut instinct for that. But it is difficult when you have a client when you feel like every single thing you're justifying, you're fighting for it. I don't like that. I like the clients that go, I trust you, You trust me. You make a mistake, tell us. I make a mistake, I tell you. There's that. And that takes time. I get it. And I get it takes time. But I'd just say be open to doing that.
Fantastic. I think that was 7 steps, but that's absolutely brilliant. I do like the third party as a sort of checker on what's going on if you don't know what you're doing. I've not seen that before. I really, really like that. And the whole thing of it's never finished is something, if you're non-techie, you think, oh, build me a website or build me an app. And it's like, here's the product, that's the end of it. It doesn't work like that, does it?
No. It's got to be, and also like you want your users to tell you how it should be better, not necessarily you, because you might have an idea and a vision and that's great, but it's the people that are actually using it that you want to hear from them to be like, this feature is great, but it's really annoying how it does this. So get it to market, get people testing, and just then constantly make it better.
Just before we go then, a couple of final questions for you then. For anybody who's out there who's either thinking of launching a business or currently running a business, what would your one key piece of advice be to a business owner?
Be smart with it. So I'm not suggesting that you leave a, $100,000 job and you've got 6 kids and a mortgage to pay and you haven't got a wing or a prayer, anything like that. But I'm like, look at the risk of you starting that business. So actually, how much money would you need in savings to keep the family going for 6 months? Or what's your, so be smart about it. But also, if this is something that's inside you, just do it. Just do it. Do not wait for your ducks to be in a row or to have the right time. Just do it. Because as long as you've mitigated any risks of it failing, that's what I did with Zeal. I was like, right, I will give this 12 months. I was in a position where I was single, no kids, realistically, if the shit hit the fan, I could move back in with my parents and get a job in any agency. I would have easily gotten a job. But you go, right, that's plan B. So always have a plan B. Once you've got a plan B and you don't like it, but you're comfortable with it, just do it. Just do it. Resign, go. Literally now, resign, do it, because there's no perfect time. And you always, the old saying of you always regret things you haven't done is entirely true. And I have made some mistakes, some big mistakes, professionally, personally. But I tell you what, if I got run over by a bus, I would have 0 regrets. I have always, if I want to do something, I will do it. And as long as you're not hurting anyone, then that's, in my opinion, that's what life is about. You're only here one time. It's a one-time thing. So do what you want to do. You scratch that itch, just get on with it. Just do it. Worry about it later.
I totally agree with that. And I always say, the old Dr. Pepper thing, what's the worst that could happen? And like, as you say, all right, it doesn't work. Well, get myself a job, back yourself. But now you've said you've made some really dreadful mistakes. I have to ask you, what's the worst one? What was the worst mistake?
Oh, no. I can't answer that question because some of them are tiny, some of them are big. I don't think they're mistakes because I think they always lead you to where you're supposed to be. I went through a divorce in COVID and had to live in a Airbnb in Shipley. And, some would say there's a mistake in there somewhere, isn't there? Whether it was getting married in the first place or leaving, who knows? But no, they're not mistakes. They're just learnings. And okay, you think, well, I did that and that wasn't great. But yeah, you can't really worry about it. And actually that going back to that story about me being very poorly, that is one of the biggest changes because, I used to be one of those people that would make a mistake, say the wrong thing, or I don't know, send an email to the wrong person or do something. And I would just think about it. Oh, why did I say it like that? I shouldn't have said it like that. I should have said this. I shouldn't have done that. And you think, God, what a waste of energy. What a waste of energy coming back on the train, worrying about something you said in a meeting when actually you could be on the train looking for another opportunity or smiling at a stranger or, listening to a podcast. Don't waste your energy on shit that doesn't matter and it's not serving you. It's not serving you to worry. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so the final question, we ask every guest this. Give us a recommendation of a Leeds company you want to give a shout out to.
Oh God, that's really hard. I don't want to pick like favorite clients. So I'm not going to do a client. I'll do a PR agency actually, because I think historically and non-historically, so actually now, PR agencies are really hard to find good ones. I think there's a lot of bad ones out there. Can I do two?
Go on.
Yes. So I would highly recommend a PR agency called Hatch, who are absolutely brilliant at what they do and just wonderful human beings. And I would also recommend a PR agency called Lucky North, who have a very specific PR product for startups and scale-ups. So we work with them quite a lot. They do all sorts of stuff. Both of them do, but I've done PR in various degrees for 20 years. And it's only when I've done PR with these two companies, I'm like, PR is really good. It's actually really good. And every client we've worked with on them, we've seen increases in their traffic and their digital stuff. So yeah, those two PR agencies, very good.
Fantastic. There you go. Hatched and Lucky North, and there will be links to them in the show notes below. So if anybody wants to contact them, they can do. And there'll be links, obviously, to Jane and We Are Zeal. Jane Slimming, that's been absolutely fantastic. Really appreciate your time and some fantastic learnings and some interesting stories in there as well. So thanks very much indeed.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode. I hope you found it both interesting and of use. To make sure you don't miss any future episodes, please subscribe to the show. Go on, do it now. Do it now before you go off and do something else. Much appreciated. Oh, and don't forget our gentleman's agreement. See you next week.